guys, welcome back. We're starting an Adulting 101 series where I'm teaching you about all things you need to know about basically getting into the adult life. And today we've got Ryan here from On Property. We're going to be talking about, pretty obviously, about property. I know that through some of the comments, some of you have expressed a little bit of interest in getting started in property. So just wanted to chat to Ryan about potentially how you could go about doing that, potentially talking about a little bit about savings and yeah, just helping you guys along on your journey. So welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. I'm really excited to do this because I remember at 14 reading property books, saving a deposit around 14 to 16. And even at 16, I was going out looking at properties, but obviously no bank is going to lend money to a 16-year-old with a casual job. But yeah, I was always passionate about property from a really young age. And I think I find it a really interesting topic. And I think if you can get into it at a young age, you can really set yourself up for the future and to live just an epic life.
Yeah, damn, at 14, that's very young, by the way.
Yeah, I was a strange kid reading self-help at 14 and property books.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking that it's like, they're probably like 17, 18, 20, 23 even, thinking that it might be a bit late for them, but this is not true, and we'll probably talk about this in a bit. But yeah, Ryan, could you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, so hey, my name's Ryan. I run On Property as well as a bunch of other websites. So I always find it so hard to describe how I work and what I do because I run my own business and make money in a variety of different ways. But related to property, I create a lot of educational content to help people understand the basics about property, understand the basics about property strategy and how property can set them up for the long term. And I guess one of the biggest things is getting people comfortable to, okay, let's take that next step and let's actually get into the market. And then I work with a buyer's agent as well, and we've just helped so many people have success and set themselves up. So I think if people are thinking about, okay, I'm thinking about property, probably a good thing to cover is like why property in the beginning. And for me, why do I love property so much as an investment tool is that you can borrow money in order to get into it. So the banks can lend you money to buy an asset bigger than what you could buy yourself. But I also love that there's multiple different ways to make money from property. So, a lot of channels and a lot of people talk about, get rich quick. I'm not about that life. I'm just about like setting up my future and the idea of, okay, I can borrow money to buy a property that I can rent out. The person renting it can pay off the mortgage for me and be in a positive cash flow position. And then eventually over time, like that person will have paid off the mortgage. Well, I'll pay it off because they pay me and I pay the mortgage, but it'll be paid off. I'll own it outright. And then any income that comes in the form of rent, I can then use in my life and I can live off that. So I just love the passive income nature of it. And that's always what I've been really interested in throughout the years is, okay, how can we set up passive income streams that can support my life and support what I want to do in the future?
Yeah, and I think the passive income is just such a life-changing worldview that one person can have. And I guess in case anybody doesn't understand what passive income is, it's essentially when your money works for you. You're not putting your time into saying like working at a retail store for 1 hour and getting $20 for that hour, but your income is no longer limited or tied to your own time. So this is how a lot of people actually become wealthy because they're able to set up businesses or property or even shares if that's what you're interested in, and that money starts to work for you. That actually makes me quite interested. Like, what made you go, okay, property as opposed to say shares or cryptocurrency, let's say, I'm
Well,
sure
I have done
people.
cryptocurrency and dabbled in that as well. But that's probably a story for another day. But I don't know, property, I always saw the passive income side of things. I remember struggling to understand shares as a child. My mum was always into shares and I never really got it. As an adult now, I totally understand it. And so I don't know why I struggled to understand it so much. But I just really property just clicked with me. I understood it. I was passionate about it. I enjoyed learning about it. And yeah, the passive income side of things, as you said, was huge for me. And even just in life in general, I took that concept of passive income rather than dollars for hours. And I just think that completely changed my life. So it's something that we haven't talked about, is that at the age of 28, I was financially free through my business. So at 28, I had set up my business that it was earning passive income, that I didn't have to work. So from 28 to 30, I just didn't work. Like, I went to the beach every day, I took coffee, I did a little bit of work just to kind of keep myself interested and do things. But because of that shift in mindset to say, okay, rather than trading dollars for hours, rather than working and trying to earn more each and every hour, which was, I guess, what most of my peers were doing in their life, was like climbing the corporate ladder, getting paid a better hourly wage or getting paid more salary. I was constantly hunting for ways that I could do work now, but that would pay off long term and generate passive income. And I remember the big shift that happened in my life when I started doing this. And in the beginning, you can't find any of these opportunities. You're like, do they even exist? But then as I constantly looked for them, eventually they started to show themselves to me, or I found ways to make passive income.
Yeah, awesome. So when it comes to, getting started in property, where does someone begin? There's just so much to be learned. Where's a good place to start?
I think the thing is, there's so much more out there than there was when I was getting started. When I was getting started, it was just a couple of books, and that was about the only resources you had. And so now there's a lot of YouTube channels, there's a lot of podcasts, there's blogs out there that are really good as well. But sometimes that can also be overwhelming because you've got so many different opinions, you've got so much to learn that it can be overwhelming. I think if you're looking at getting started, the first thing is trying to understand, okay, why property? Why is property important? And I guess we've already kind of covered that in terms of you can get passive income from it, but also we didn't talk about you can get capital growth. So the property can go up in value over time, which can make people quite wealthy as well. But I guess getting that, understanding why it's important, and then trying to work out, okay, what sort of strategy could work for me? And then also getting into the habit of budgeting, which is not a very sexy word, but budgeting and what I call and other people call paying yourself first, I think is the biggest thing I wish I learned at a young age. That budgeting is not something you're either good at or not. Because I thought I'm just not good at budgeting. Because I try, I fail. I try, I fail. I try, I fail. I sucked at budgeting. So I was like, well, I'm just not good at budgeting. It's just not me. But then as I got older, I learned, no, budgeting is actually a skill and something that you can learn and get better at. So as soon as I shifted my mind to say, okay, budgeting is a skill that's worth learning, I started applying myself to it. And when I started budgeting, I'd always go over budget, and I couldn't stick to my budget very well. But then as I continued to practice and not let that hold me back, I got better at it, and it became so much easier. And this concept of pay yourself first is every time you get paid, so whether that be weekly or fortnightly or monthly or whatever it is, you take a set amount of money and you pay yourself into your savings or to pay off debt or whatever it is. So usually when we get paid, as an adult, there's a lot of expenses like rent or mortgage, there's things with kids and all of that sort of stuff that all has to be paid. Sure. And rather than, I guess, getting your money, paying everything else in your life, living, and then, okay, I'll save whatever's left over at the end of the week or the month. It's like, no, I'm going to treat my savings as if it was a mortgage, or my savings as if it was rent. That if I don't pay rent, I'm getting kicked out of that house. And so to treat it like that and to say, okay, I'm going to pay myself first, put aside this money as soon as I get paid. That's the first thing I'm doing. And then I need to live off the rest, work out how to live off the rest. Or if I can't live off the rest, okay, I need to work out how to earn some more money so I can get by.
Yeah, right. I really love the idea of pay yourself first as well, because I guess it makes you feel like wealthier in the sense like you're actually investing in yourself before before all the expenses. And I know money mindset can be quite troubling for a lot of people. Like a lot of people can be like, I don't make enough money, or money's never going to come my way. We all have really weird relationships with money. So I think a lot of people can be quite like negatively impacted by the idea of like, oh, I still have to pay for this, and then whatever's left over, I'm just going to try and save. But like, it's such a like crappy feeling as opposed to, yeah, I'm going to pay myself first and then everything else is going to come. Like, it's the slightest tweak, but
Yeah.
it makes such a big difference.
And in the beginning, it's really hard because you're like, okay, I know I'm putting aside whether it be $100 or more than that. And in the beginning, you're like, oh, I could use that $100 and buy something that I want, or I could go out for drinks with friends. And so it can be hard to make those sacrifices to say, I can't afford to fix the aircon in my car because I've paid myself first. And I
Yes.
need to actually also save up to pay for that or whatever it is,
Yeah.
But over time, it becomes a habit and it becomes something that you just naturally do, and you stop thinking of that as your money for things that you want in your life, and it's just like it becomes a habit, and it just becomes easy to save because saving a
Mm.
deposit is one of the hardest things to do. And so getting into those habits just means, well, like you were able to save a deposit and purchase a property at 23. And when I talk to you, you're like, you don't even know how you did it. You just kind of worked hard and was saving money, and you just ended up with a deposit and was able to invest, which has really
Yeah.
set you up for your future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when it comes to saving, like, I guess how much should people try to save, and how much is a deposit normally?
Okay, so a deposit, normally you're looking at around 10 to 20% of the purchase price of a property. So depending on what kind of property you're looking at buying, if you're looking at a house on the beaches in Sydney or Melbourne, then you're talking millions of dollars. 20% of $1 million is 200,000. That's huge. If you're looking at something like Brisbane, purchasing a house in Brisbane, maybe 20 kilometers from the CBD, you might be looking at 400 or $450,000. So
Yeah,
10% of that might be, $45,000,
it's a
and
lot less.
20% might be 90,000. But then you've
Yeah,
also got closing costs as well. If you're purchasing a property to live in for yourself, sometimes you can get exemptions from stamp duty depending on what state you're buying in and what the government's offering at that point in
yeah,
time. Otherwise, if you're purchasing as an investment, often you'll have to pay stamp duty. So you're looking at a big cost there. As well as closing costs, you've got to hire a solicitor or conveyancer to help you with the contract. Often you want to do a building and pest inspection. There's a
yeah,
bunch of other costs that come with purchasing a property. So generally, you'd look at around about 5 to 6% of the purchase price of the property for those closing costs as well.
sure.
So you're looking at a deposit of 10 to 20% probably, and then 5 to 6% in order of those closing costs. So for me, I'm looking at purchasing a property soon around 450,000. So 10% deposit, 45 grand, plus 6% closing costs, I think it's around 27,000 or something like that. And
Yeah,
so for me, my target would be around, $70,000 to save for that, which is
yeah,
granted a lot of money.
yes. It is.
But
It is a lot of money.
yeah, but I guess if you're saving over time and you built up that habit, especially as
Yeah,
your income grows, then
yeah.
it does become achievable.
Yeah, and like a lot of these costs can be quite scary, like the unfamiliar terms like conveyancer, like what does a build and pest inspection do? I actually did a video which I will link. I don't know if it will be live on the channel yet, but like where I go through all my costs involved in purchasing a property, so that you guys can watch it. But I guess like when you are first starting out to save, potentially you might not even really know how much you're saving up for though. You know what I mean? Like, because
Yeah.
that saving process is quite long. Like it could be a few years before you actually have anything that resembles a deposit enough for a like moderate sized home. Um, so yeah, like how should people start saving if they still aren't 100% sure of what property they want to buy or like how much it's going to be like ranging between?
Yeah, well, I guess this is why I think paying yourself first and automating that process is so important because it
Mm,
can take years in order to do it, especially
mm,
when you're starting out in your career and your income isn't huge.
mm,
It can take time. By automating the process, you start to forget about focusing on saving and just focus
mm.
on like living the best life that you can live with the money that you have left over after you've saved. So you're
Yes.
just naturally saving. And Simon, who's one of my friends, he's looking at purchasing his fourth property at the moment. and he's just so in the process of paying himself first. He's just like, oh yeah, I just save a deposit every year. It just happens. Like he doesn't even think about it because he's so in that process, and he's been traveling and living his life and doing that. So I think if you don't know exactly how much, just automating it so you don't have to think about it and you can focus on, okay, grow my career, earn more money, or live my life, I think.
Yeah. That was something that we talked about on your channel as well, because we did a video for your channel. But when it comes to people like beginning in property, like I guess the point that I'm taking away from this is that you don't necessarily need to have all the answers as long as you are just starting to save up. And it's good practice anyway. So if you're somebody who isn't 100% sure if you want to get into property, just saving up is a good habit to have, because eventually you're going to need to buy something with that money, whether it be a car, whether it be, I don't know, that nice fancy new thing you want. Yeah, but
Well, that's it. And I think one of the great things about it taking time to save a deposit to get into the market is that it does force you to slow down a bit. And in that time, you can learn a lot about investing in property. And so there's so many resources out there at the moment. Like for me, I learned so much about business and investing through just listening to podcasts or listening to YouTube videos, but while I was brushing my teeth. So not watching the videos, but just listening to them while I was driving or skating or brushing my teeth or whatever it is I was doing. Sometimes even when I was working, I'd be listening to podcasts and just learning along the way. So rather than listening to music in the car whenever I was driving, I would be listening to a podcast or listening to an audiobook or something like that to educate myself. And it's amazing how much you can learn over a year or over 2 years when you're spending like an hour here, half an hour there, 5 minutes here. When you just spend that time learning it, you can accumulate so much knowledge. And if you don't know what to do in property, like that's so normal in the beginning. If you're like, oh, I should invest in property, I have no idea where to start, totally normal. Like that's where we all began. And then we go down, the learning rabbit hole of YouTube or podcasts and to start, learning how do people make money in property? What are the different strategies out there? What's positive cash flow? What's negative gearing? You start to learn these terms and learn how people make money through it. And then eventually you'll find the path that works for you. So I think advice I would give is spend time learning. So if you're doing stuff anyway, going for a run or at the gym or driving, it's like use that time to educate yourself. But then also, just because someone says it's a good strategy doesn't mean it's a good strategy for you. So just because I have a strategy that I think is absolutely amazing, and I know people can make money that way, there's another guy down the street who has a completely different strategy that he fully believes in that can also work. And so does, the girl in Melbourne and whoever it is. And so there's lots of different strategies out there. They can all work. They can all make money. But I guess don't get sucked into just one person's way of thinking. Listen, take bits from everywhere, and then see what resonates with you and what lines up with you and what you want for your life and for your investments.
Yeah, 100%. Like, we were talking earlier about how there's just so much noise when it comes to property investing, and everyone has their own strategy, and it's going to take some time for you to figure out the strategy that works for you. And that is okay. Like, you don't need to have the answer immediately. Even after you purchase your first property, like if you're still not really, really sure, that's okay. Like, we live and learn, and it's always a work in progress. But yeah, like what recommendations? Do you have any specific books, any specific podcasts or videos you would recommend for people who are just getting started in property?
Yeah, well, the book that I read, which is pretty dated now, is 0 to 130 Properties in 3.5 Years by Steve McKnight. So that was a book written in probably the early 2000s. It was a very different time than it is now. So he obviously purchased 130 properties in 3.5 years, which is absolutely insane. And I think he was doing it full time, and he had a business partner that was earning money, but not that much money that you couldn't do that in today's market. But what's really great about that book is it goes through a lot of the basics of property and a lot of the basics of cash flow as well. So he'll say, here's what I purchased it for, here's how much it rents for, here's the expenses, here's how I ended up with positive cash flow. And so he'll outline all of that sort of stuff. So it gives like a really good outline. But I think as well, the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if people haven't read that, that one is just like a must read, because that's what shifted my mind. That and Robert Kiyosaki's other books shifted my mind from saying, okay, I'm going to have a career and trade my hours for dollars. Shifted my mind to say, okay, passive income is a thing. Where are the opportunities for that? So those books are a must. And then, you know, when it comes to property online, you know, you can check out my YouTube channel, or I work with Ben Everingham from Pumped on Property. So you can search On Property or Pumped on Property. We just ended up with really similar names by accident. But both of our channels have really helpful content. And then I'm sure YouTube will suggest a bunch of other stuff through that you can go ahead and learn more through that.
Yeah. That's how I discovered Ryan, actually, just through YouTube, and then that's how I discovered Ben through Ryan. So, and now it's come full circle. You're on my channel now.
Yeah, totally.
It's crazy. Thank you so much for all your advice and your thoughts. I feel like a lot of this will be helpful for people who are, just getting started. And I'll make sure to leave some links so if they wanted to learn more about the things that you're teaching and, you know, the strategies that you advise on in the description box below. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, then please leave a comment. Let us know like what questions could we answer for you next time. And who knows, maybe we'll do a part 2 at some point.
Definitely. I'm definitely keen to come back.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Bye.